Hey everybody, I want to talk about some of the stuff that goes on in America. I know I have a few international viewers, so I'm going to put this out there because just in case America hasn't rammed its own history down the throats of the rest of the planet, I think there are some internal workings of the American government that, whether you live in America or outside of America, they've either just been sort of forgotten, swept aside, or maybe just people didn't realize. The news right now is being dominated by guns, and this was as soon as we had the shootings in El Paso and Dayton in California. I made this prediction that we're going to forever hear about guns until Christmas, probably. I think probably around Thanksgiving, the gun narrative will go away. We sort of have narrative seasons, like we have holidays and holiday seasons. We have narrative seasons. And if you don't believe me, look, we're getting back into football season, so we're going to start readdressing racial inequality, racial protesting, kneeling at the anthem. All of that stuff's about to come back into the picture for the fourth year in a row. I'll be really surprised if it does not. During the summer, we also have global warming and climate change narratives. We also have that in the winter. So at the hottest part of the year and the coldest part of the year, coincidentally, we talk about climate change. Right now, it's guns, and guns are kind of sort of ad hoc season. So anytime there's a major gun-related event, we have about 90 days of gun-dominated media and news. Here's why guns are not going away. And it's not because there's a big, powerful gun lobby. It's not because of corruption in politics and corruption in the government. And here's why. Those are things that have always been there, always will be there. Period. We're not going to get rid of corruption. We're not going to get rid of big lobbies in Washington. We're not. A lot of it, to really sort of understand that dynamic, George Orwell wrote Animal Farm. If you read Animal Farm, I think it's an excellent illustration. It's a story about animals on a farm, haha. They're tired of the way the farmer runs things, so they overthrow the farmer and they take control of the farm themselves. And the ultimate result is that the animals end up being their own tyrants, and they don't really solve any of their own problems. But all of that aside, none of it is really related to government. None of it is related to powerful gun lobby. The NRA is not this big evil corporation. They're also not our knights in shining armor. NRA is just a club of citizens, and the political lobbyists act on behalf of the citizens who want guns and who support the notion of guns in America. But there's always a question of, whenever there was the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand, they acted quickly. They banned guns, and it worked. In Australia, same thing happened. They banned guns, and it worked. Why will it not work in the U.S.? There's a few things about the U.S. that are unique compared to the rest of the world. So first of all, it's the fact that countries like Australia and New Zealand, they are way smaller. They're way smaller. Their governments are far simpler in structure. Most countries, even in Europe and everywhere else, most countries would fit neatly within the footprint of Texas, one of 50 states. So in the U.S. we have Alaska, California, Texas. Those are the big three. And then the other 47 nameless states. Sorry if you're from one of those, but y'all know what I mean. It's always Texas, California, or Alaska. Most of these countries would fit neatly within Texas, and their populations would just be a fraction of the population of Texas. So they're far smaller, they're far simpler. So from the American perspective, it would be about like Houston has millions of people, New York has millions of people, so it would be like maybe 2 or 3 of the states in the United States coming together to agree on something, not 50, because the way that the government is structured, we have the Second Amendment of the Constitution gives you the right to bear arms for self-defense in whatever way you see fit, and it says it will not be infringed in any way. Now that's the writing, that's the wording of the amendment. And what is not told to anybody in the news or the narrative ever is that if we really want to have efficient, effective gun control, we have to first change the Constitution of the United States. And in order to do that, we have to have 2/3 of the states vote to say, yes, we need to change the Constitution. And then after something is drafted, 3/4 need to approve it. Well, that's really kind of hard to do in this political climate, seeing as we're pretty much 50-50, and we can barely pass anything past our noses. So that's just not going to happen. And the rest of it is a moot point, right? We can talk about background checks, common sense gun control legislation, and the thing is, most people just don't know anything about guns. When we talk about banning semi-automatic weapons, all of them are semi-automatic. That's like all cars have an automatic transmission. You can't say, you know what, we need to get rid of automatic transmission cars or vehicles. People would be like, no, what the hell are you talking about? Right? So just about every firearm is semi-automatic. Well, the U.S. has 400 million guns. There's more guns than we have people. That's a fact. Do you realize what a massive undertaking that is? It's huge. We can't do that. It would be virtually impossible. Even if we decided to do it, and even if we convinced everybody that this is the way to go, there's just too much of it. And it all trickles down from that. It all trickles down from there. Problems are easier to solve when they're smaller. Simply put, problems are easier to solve when they are smaller. Then there's sort of this illusion about the United States being a world power, but can't handle its business at home, and there's a good reason for that. The government of the United States is actually literally structured so that it can't do anything. Like, that's how it was designed on purpose. It goes all the way back to 1776 and all that. After the colonies fought for independence, they drafted the Constitution, they drafted the structure. They did not want an all-powerful government there on their shores. But they also recognized that we have a need for something that is centralized just to address common issues, right? We can't just be 13 individual colonies. We're all sort of in this together. So we got to have something that we need to have a rug to tie the room together, pretty much. So the federal government was the rug. But they didn't want it to be strong at all. Why? Because that's where all the corruption goes. So they wanted it to be such that the corruption doesn't all centralize. The corruption would effectively keep itself spread out among all the smaller state and local governments. And if you have a couple of corrupt people, then each localized state government could handle that, right? And if one state goes fully corrupt, oh well, then we've got the other 12. That was the initial purpose. So they designed the federal government so that it really can't do anything. There has to be a large amount of consensus before it can do something. So it's very much, it has a break open point. It's like a pressure valve. You know, like with a pressure cooker, for example, a pressure cooker, it does not release the valve. The pressure release valve doesn't open until it hits the correct pressure, right? 15 psi, if you're in America. So the federal government has a break open point. This is how Obamacare got passed, was because it's a rarity for one political party to control all three houses of government. You know, the House, the Congress, and then the office of president. So they rammed Obamacare through for that reason. Other than that, though, right now we have a Democrat-controlled House, and then Republicans control the Senate, and they control the executive branch. So there's a system of checks and balances in place. Intentionally, because it's designed to not be our rulers, right? The federal government is designed not to rule the people. The federal government is designed to serve the people, and the way that it's forced to serve the people is by designing it to have zero power unless the people want it to happen. And I mean really, really want it to happen. So you can think of it like in the parent-child relationship. When children come to the parents trying to tattle on each other, or whenever they come to the parents saying, you know, I want ice cream, I'm sure you do, right? Bobby pulled my hair. Okay, well, don't pull her hair, Bobby. You know, or whenever they come up tattling, you know, so-and-so broke the rules. It's like, okay, well, don't come up and tattle, right? But then if you get swamped with all the kids wanting something over and over and over, and they really, really want it, then you recognize that there's consensus among the children and something needs to happen. That's how the American government is designed. But when it comes to foreign policy, all of that is left in the hands of elected officials. So there's not necessarily a need for consensus when it comes to foreign policy and what we're doing. There's levels of classified information, shit that's, you know, in the interest of national security, that kind of stuff. So they don't need the consensus of the people to do a lot of the foreign stuff. But the domestic stuff, they do. Well, as I talked about in a previous video called People Do Not Have Ideas, Ideas Have People. The people of the United States are being divided 50-50, which is an incredibly suspect number, because why are people 50-50 split? Well, how do you get an entire nation of people with exactly polar opposite ideas? Well, when you control the flow of information into individual regions of a country, and if you can control what people are reading and seeing and hearing, then you can control their consensus reality. So there's really just two consensus realities in the U.S. right now, right? And that drives it. That keeps everything such that the people stay divided and nothing can get done in Washington, which means whoever is controlling the information right now is probably pretty happy with the way things are going, and they don't want anything to change. When the people who control the information want something to change, then you'll see the consensus grow in all the different areas. Whenever you start to see the mindset shift in different parts of the country, then you'll know that whoever's controlling the flow of information, the flow of data, wants that change. And you can see this. You can see this happening every day. If you read enough news from different sources from different parts of the country, you can watch this effect happen. So anyways, I'm out of time. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, or share. I'll see you on the next video.